on the perimeter. And you're just going to put that on repeat. I'm going to go in about 1/8 of an inch away from the previous stitch. I'm going to come out where the blanket and the coral meet. I'm going to pull that needle up inside the circle. And I'm going to do it again. I'm going to hold that out of the way. I'm going to go in at 1/8 of an inch, come up where the blanket meets the coral on the bottom of the F, and I'm going to pull my needle to the sky, staying inside that circle so that it lays that blanket stitch over. I'm going to do one more on the straight. I'm going to come up again where the blanket meets the coral, and again, and I'm going to use my thumb to hold that again, come around in that circle. I'm going to reposition this. I'm going to do this one at a diagonal so I can catch that little circle or that rounded part of the base of the F. And again employing my left hand thumb. I'm going to go in pretty close to my previous stitches, and I'm going to come out where on the sand, just at the edge where the sand and the coral meet. Kind of smooth it a little bit, grab it again with my thumb, and keep going. I don't mark any of these stitches. Again, this is supposed to be a fun project. If that's going to make you a little bit crazy, then that's okay. You come in maybe with, if you went ahead and bought the they're not included in the kit, but recommended a white clover iron away, wash away marker. You may want to take a ruler and dot out where your 1/8 of an inch is. I don't think it's necessary. This is supposed to be fun. Don't make it too difficult. Again, I'm going 1/8 of an inch away inside the coral. I'm coming up where the coral and the sand are through the sand right at the edge of the coral, and I'm pulling up through that circle. And that's my next blanket stitch. And then you're just going to put that on repeat until you have gone all the way around the motif. Now, guess what? One pull of 2 strands of floss is not going to be enough. So I'm going to stop the camera in a few minutes and stitch till I'm at my end of my thread, and then talk about how do I stop and how do I restart. So a couple more stitches I'm going to stitch right up to. I have no idea what this part of the F is called, but I'm going to stitch right up to it, and then I'm going to stop. Put one more straight stitch in, come up at the blanket. And again, I want my needle to literally come up right through the blanket, right at the base. Each time you do that, I'm calling that take a bite, when you take a bite with your needle. As long as you've picked up a couple of the top threads of this sand blanket, it's enough to secure it. Your needle does not have to go all the way through to the back to secure your motif. You just need to catch enough of it. You can see, hopefully you can see in the camera that my needle came up through the blanket. And that's all we really need. And I'm going to pull that. So actually, I'm going to do through this part because it is a little bit of an interesting thing. It's the same as this, kind of like that, kind of like that, kind of this side bigger. So let me keep going. When I come here, now I could just change and come straight, but I like to put in an additional stitch that's diagonal up through. So although it's not 1/8 of an inch away right here where the F coral meets the sand, it is 1/8 of an inch away at the base of what I call a leg of the blanket stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and put that diagonal stitch in, and then my next stitch is going to nearly be in the same place. I'm going to come 1/8 of an inch away this way, and do that again. Come up and come through. I'm going to encourage you to not split stitches. What that means is when I come back up, I'm not going to put it through that thread. I'm not going to break the thread. I'm not going to put my needle through the thread. And the reason I ask you not to do that is, should you need to take something out, if you've stitched through previous stitching, it's almost impossible to remove those threads. It's difficult, frustrating work, so you want to be right next to it, but not through the previous stitch. And then I'm going to pull that one. So you'll note where that inside corner is, that's called a concave. Remember, you go into a cave, so that's a concave. I basically make a chicken toe, 1, 2, 3. So notice that I've got one stitch, a diagonal stitch, a straight stitch. So I basically created a chicken toe or a chicken foot right there. And I don't know why I like it, but I do. So that's how I handle that particular area of the stitching. I'm going to move down 1/8 of an inch again, roughly, take a bite, come up through the sand right next to the coral and do the next stitch. Now I'm rounding. When you need to go over a point, which would be convex, meaning it sticks out, or over a circular area that sticks out, your stitches need to get a little closer together so that they will safeguard around that and turn without coming up straight over the top of your work. So my stitches are going to get a little closer together at this curve. And again, I'm doing that so that I can get those stitches to lay flat. If your stitches are too far apart, they want to curl and come up and over the work, and we don't want that. We want it to all lay down flat. I'm going to reposition again a little bit, and I'm going to take a bite in, a bite out right where the sand meets the coral. And again, my stitches got a tiny bit closer, not quite a 1/16 of an inch, but a little bit closer in this smaller motif. The other reason I did that too is I need to split the difference, meaning I need stitches halfway in on this side and I need halfway in on that side. This is almost just about 1/4 of an inch. So using 1/4 of an inch as my guide to make big stitches is not going to work. So again, and then right here at the edge, I'm going to kind of make another one real close. I'm going to turn it a little more. And I'm going to take a bite, come up. Remember, your needle always has to come up through that circle. See the circle? Pull, pull, pull. Again, don't pull so tight. Pull just tight enough that it lays flat around your perimeter, but don't pull over tight. Couple more stitches on this narrow part of the F, and then I will be there. Make that same kind of chicken foot on this edge here. Sometimes my chicken foot has 2 stitches, sometimes it has 3. It just depends on how much room I have to work with. Back to another area that kind of needs that chicken foot again. So it's got a straight venue, and then it's got a little bit of the diagonal one. Notice that I'm repositioning my work frequently. I'm only stitching an inch or 2 before I've got to reposition where it's comfortable for me. Now the top of the F is fairly narrow, like this inside portion of the F was. So don't make your stitch, don't take your bite in the leg more than halfway, because you've got to save room to stitch the other side of this F when we get around to it. Almost lost my thread there, so I'm going to stop for a sec and see what I did wrong. There we go. And then pull that little circle until it lays smoothly. All right, as I said, I'm going to stop and I'm going to stitch some more. And when I get to the end, I want to stop. And when I stop, I want to probably leave 1.5 inches to 2 inches. Probably don't, quote unquote, waste more than that, but you need at least 1.5 inches to make a proper knot, bury that knot, and not be frustrated. So that means I've got to use up about 5 or 6 more inches of thread, and then that'll leave me just enough to tie a knot. So I'll be back when I'm ready to do that.